Welcome to the Beyond the Bucket Show, a podcast centered around optimizing all life's buckets. We all have buckets we are balancing: coaching, entrepreneurial ventures, family, passion projects, and health. Let's all take this journey together and become bucket fillers. And here's your host, Chris McSwain.
Ron Filice is one of the most successful people in the greater Bay Area. He built one of the largest privately owned employee benefit consulting firms in the nation. Ron started Filice Insurance in 1989 from ground zero, and over a 30-year period grew the company to almost $40 million in annual revenue by 2019. We have a high-level conversation about his competitive nature, building a winning culture within his organization, his passion for sports and how it applies to business, and why he will work until his final days. Ron shares his management style and his unique approach to managing people. I absolutely loved our conversation and believe everyone should be truly inspired by Ron's passion for life and helping his employees achieve their financial freedom. Ron Filice, we have an insurance legend. Welcome to the Beyond the Buckets podcast.
Thank you for having me, Chris.
Well, I would like to get right into it, but I got to give you your props. You know, they say give your flowers while you can still smell them. As I mentioned, you are an insurance legend here in the Bay Area, one of probably the most influential people in this area. You've done so much for so many people and not just yourself. And I just really want to appreciate you while you're still here and you still got a lot left in the tank. But I'm excited to have you on and just share your story with everybody.
Thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
Well, I always like to get a little bit of background. You grew up in this area. Tell me a little bit about your upbringing before we get into, you know, how successful you've done for yourself and for so many other people.
Sure. So, I'm born and raised and will die here in the Bay Area. I love it here. It's home. It's really all I know, right?
Right.
So I grew up and went to St. John Vianney, I guess junior high or 1 through 8th grade.
Mm-hmm.
And that was my home there on the east side. I played East Hills Little League and football and enjoyed that. And some of my best memories are from playing sports as a youngster. And then my mom wanted me to go to Bellarmine. I didn't really know what Bellarmine was back then, but she was adamant that I was going to go to Bellarmine.
Yeah.
And I went to Bellarmine from 80 to 84. And what a tremendous opportunity for me. A great school. I'm proud to be an alumni there now. And some of my best friends are from my football team there and the school there and from being a part of that. Then after Bellarmine, I went to San Jose State.
Mm-hmm.
And promptly after San Jose State, I started Filice Insurance, where I had the pleasure of meeting you.
Well, I would love to get into all that. In college, what was your major and what were your thoughts, and how did you go about starting Filice Insurance? For those that don't know, you were the #1 privately held insurance firm, brokerage firm in California. And, you were competing with all of the, non-private entities. Wells Fargo was one of the big ones, ABD, and you were right there with them. You were able to get $30 million in sales. Over that, I think 37 million was the number before you sold your company a few years ago. Just tell me about your process on how you got to insurance.
Sure. Like anything else, I went to college and probably like most, Chris, I didn't really know what I wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a very trying time when you're in school is getting educated and trying to find a passion for something. I think that's a big word that I'll use a lot throughout this podcast. So I majored in accounting because my dad had an accounting firm.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that I would work for my parents. And they're great people, as you know, Chris, and I enjoyed my time with them. But one thing when you work for your parents, I've always said is they love you and you love them. And what I mean by that is when I would ask my mom what to do on a certain day, she would say, pick up your sister and run to the bank for me.
Yeah.
And then on a Thursday and Friday, when it was great sunny weather, I would say, hey, Mom, do you mind if I take the days off and go to the beach? I was a young man back then,
right.
22, 23. So what happens is when you love your parents and they love you, you take advantage of them subconsciously. They take advantage of you subconsciously, not in a bad way, just in a loving way.
Right.
So I really wasn't fit to be in accounting. So one day I went to my father and I said, Dad, I'm going to go to a big 8 accounting firm. And it was probably the best thing that happened to me, Chris, because I experienced failure. And failure is good for anyone because it allows you to, get up off the canvas, scrape your elbows off and find out that you can never give up in life no matter what you're doing. And you got to keep moving forward. So I went to work for Touche. It didn't work out there. I lasted about a year there.
Mm-hmm.
And went to my father and said, Dad, I love you. I would love to take over Filice Accountancy, but I'm not an accountant. And he said, I think you'll be really good in the insurance business. And he made a few calls and I got my first job at Cardinal Hughes Clayton Insurance. And really from there, the rest is history. About a year later, I would open up Filice Insurance, and I'm very, very proud of everything I've accomplished and what we built there. Great organization, as you know.
Right. So you started at ground zero, and before you got to this large $37 million company, what were some of the pillars that you had early on that really set you up for success?
So, I never knew that I was going to sell health insurance, and that's what Filice Insurance did. We specialized in selling health insurance. We would basically, as you know, I would go in every day, I would cold call people and ask them if I can have an opportunity to save them money. And I think that was a big part of my life, is that when you can help people save money, you really feel good about yourself.
No, definitely.
So every day I would go in and it was an opportunity for me to get a raise because I was on commission only. So that was a good and bad thing, right? If you didn't sell anything, you didn't make any money, but you save people money and you wrote a lot of policies, you could make, an unlimited amount of money. And that's what I tried to do, is try to do good for the community, save people money. And then the business grew as I hired very talented people.
Right. And so there was a law that allowed you to capitalize on, the market. And tell me a little bit about that and how you were able to just kind of be ahead of the curve. So many times in life, people are waiting on what's going to happen. And you've been one of those individuals that forecast what's going to happen. And then you're jumping on it before everybody gets on that hype. Tell me about that.
Yeah. In December of 1993, there was a law that came out called AB 1672, and it really changed our industry, Chris. What it did was it allowed insurance companies not to raise rates based on claims solely. So what it allowed us to do was have, I guess, a little bit more red tape, but it also allowed some protection for the consumer. And that was a bill that really helped Filice Insurance and my industry. And what it did was it provided guarantee issues. So I could go out to a company of 3 employees, and if one person had cancer, the insurance companies would have to write that, and it would take away pre-existing conditions. So I was very fortunate and blessed that I got to sell insurance, real insurance, that didn't have pre-existing conditions and there was guarantee issue.
Right. So for people that may not know you, you are a superior competitor, meaning no matter what it is, you're going to always find a way to win. And I love that nature about you. You had this competition, and I worked for you for 9 years, and you were always in competition.
Loved having you.
Whether it be in sales or whether it be just, everybody's fitness. So a while back, I would say this is probably in 2012 or something like that, before everybody had it on their phones, there was this company called Sonic Boom. And of course you got their insurance, and in turn you purchased their software that allowed everybody in the company to have this pedometer. So Correct. They came up with this sort of game plan to get everybody moving. And there was going to be a prize at the end, a bunch of prizes. And you took off on day one at 12:01. It started on a Monday. 12:01, by the time everybody woke up, you had more steps than anybody in the company, and there was no catching you from there. I think you had 25,000 steps in a very short period of time. I think you walk from your home to the office and back. Tell me about your competitive nature and your spirit.
Well, I think in anything in life, you want to be competitive. I've always learned that life's like a yardstick. Who do you want to compare yourself to? There's always a better athlete than you. There's always someone better looking than you. There's always someone a better student than you.
Right.
And in that particular contest, Chris, it was the men against the women, which we probably never ever do again.
Right.
And we decided to pick a competitive person that we would sort of focus on. Well, I picked my girlfriend who worked for us, and I knew she was going to do a lot of steps. So I wanted to sort of intimidate her on day one and put a lot of steps on. And that's just sort of my nature, is I just try to compete in every way, in every facet of my life. And I think it's fun to do that. And it's fun to do it with competitive people. So I was blessed to be a part of very competitive people. And as you know, in the insurance business, it's a very competitive industry. So if you're not competitive, that's not the industry for you.
So were you always a good salesman? Because you can sell water to a whale, time to a snail. I mean, you are just one of those people that you get in a room, you have this dynamic personality, and you're able to just captivate the audience. Were you always like that? Or, how did you become such a great salesman?
So I was fortunate. I think sales, when you believe in something, is easy. And what I mean by that, Chris, is, as I said before, if you're saving people money, you really feel good about what you're doing. You feel good about saving their employees money from their paychecks. So I just fell in love with the idea that I was helping companies, helping saving them money. At the same time, I was getting ahead. So I just fell in love with what I was doing. I developed a passion for the industry. And then, knowledge is power. I wanted to know everything about the industry. So I developed knowledge in the products I was selling and in the industry. And, I would call my competitors and go see them or have lunch with them and have coffee with them and ask them what made them so, fantastic in their careers. So I just, it was a love that I have for the industry. And I think that's what made me such a good salesperson, is I really, wanted to know my product, and I wanted to help people. And of course, make money and provide a great future for my family.
Right. Two things I took from that. One is you're just passionate to help out people. Everybody loves to save money, like you mentioned. And then secondly, your thirst for knowledge. So no matter in what industry you're in, if you aren't seeking knowledge or seeking people that are doing it like you or even better than you or even worse than you to see what you shouldn't be doing, you have to go down that road so you can figure out how you're going to be the best salesperson you are, or best coach you're going to be, or best parent, speaking, getting advice from others, sometimes unsolicited, especially as a parent. But I really like that, and I appreciate that about you. One thing I also appreciate about you is the way you treated people and your employees. So I'm a basketball coach and I'm a teacher, but I would call you a player's coach. Like if I was playing for you, I'd run through a wall because of the way you treated people. One of the very best stories I have about you, or memories of you, is the first time I came to interview, you gave me a free G2 Gatorade. Those were popular back in the day. And get whatever. And you told me to take 3 or 4 home, give some to your mom, or, or your girlfriend, or whatever it may be. And you're just a player's coach, and you're a player CEO. Tell me a little bit about that and the type of relationship that you have with your employees.
Sure. I'm a very motivational person, and I listen to a lot of great speakers. One of the speakers that I like to listen to is Lou Holtz. And Lou Holtz says, life is like a tree, right? That tree is either growing or it's dying. And that can be said for a relationship, for a company, for a marriage, for a friendship. So I always just try to keep water in that tree any way that I can. And I always felt that, with Filice Insurance, that I wouldn't ask an employee to do something that I wasn't willing to do for myself. And I think that was why Filice Insurance, or one of the reasons why we were very successful, is that everybody knew that I was there alongside them. And I always said that I was the janitor all the way up to the CEO in every everything in between. So I wasn't afraid to get my hands dirty in any project, and I wasn't afraid to motivate myself and the people with me. So I'm just glad that I touched a lot of people's lives, and I was glad that you joined us, and just very, very, very appreciative of you and thankful of all my employees.
So I love the family environment that you created. And I would say that the majority of people so if you hired all your buddies from high school and college, right? And then so they would invite some of their family and friends to come and work, and it just kind of trickled down all the way. One of my best friends, Danny, who ended up, opening an office down in Southern California for you, introduced me to you. And that's kind of how the culture was built. Tell me about that and why you wanted to keep it such like a family.
I was very lucky where I reached out to friends, and what ended up happening, Chris, because I hired so many friends, um, the company really took on sort of a family type of an atmosphere where I hired, Guy, and then Guy hired his sister and sister-in-law, and then his brother. So many people that I would hire, I would ask them, is your wife interested? Is your sister interested? Is your cousin interested? And so I was very fortunate and lucky that a lot of people I hired knew family members that wanted to come join Filice. So I think we had 13 siblings,
Right.
That were a result of really great hires. And I think one of the secrets in all of life is, if you want to be successful, surround yourself with people that are better than you and nicer than you and kinder than you, and you'll have great success in everything you did, and just hired great people.
And did you learn that from your parents? I know your mom and your dad are just really, really genuine people. If I walk into the office, your mom's going to kiss me on the cheek, and kiss everybody on the cheek, really, and then just say, "Hey, how are you? How's everything doing?" Like, they're just so genuine. And is that where you got that from?
Yeah, growing up, I was always very close to my parents, and there's a great saying: "You are what your parents were." So, my parents don't drink very much. I don't drink very much. My parents like to work till the day they die. Chris, I want to work till the day I die.
Right.
So I see a lot of similarities in people that are very much like their parents. So I probably look a lot like my parents. I talk a lot like my parents. I work like my parents.
Mm-hmm.
So just very close with them, very fortunate. I call my mom every morning. I ask her the same question, Chris. I said, "Mom, are you sleeping?" And Chris, it doesn't matter what time I call, if it's 4 in the morning, 5 in the morning, 7 in the morning, she always says the same thing: "No, I'm up, Ronnie." And she enjoys hearing from me. And I don't know if she enjoys hearing from me more, or if I enjoy more calling her. So it's a great relationship.
Tell me about your work ethic, especially in those early days. It's hard when you're starting a business from the ground up. So what did your work day look like? And, can you help people understand what you have to do to be successful, no matter
Sure.
what industry you're in?
Sure. So I remember a call from my father, who was my accountant, Chris, and he called me one morning and he said, "Son, do you know what you're doing? You have $5,000 left in your business account to make payroll. And if you don't watch it, you'll miss payroll." Well, we were trying to move into a new building, a new facility at the time. And anytime you try to grow your company, you're always met with challenges. So I think fear of failure, fear of missing a payroll, which I never did, by the way,
Yeah.
always drives people. So I would tell people, don't be afraid of fear. Let fear, sort of motivate you in a way where you don't want to fail. So I would say that the fear of failure lives in me to this day. I just don't want to fail at anything, at any aspect of my life. And as you know, life's always filled with challenges, and you can find one thing a day that you'll fail in. So I just sort of battle that, if that makes sense.
Definitely. You have these world-renowned or locally renowned meetings. They come at 8:29 every Monday. I'm not sure if you still do that, but the premise was 8:30 was too late, and so you put 8:29, on the conference room. Everybody knew they better be there before then, and just like when you were texting me 10 minutes before we were supposed to get on. And so I'm like, oh, that's Ron Filice time. So tell me about the 829, what
Sure.
that symbolizes for you.
So there's an old saying, right? You'd rather be 2 hours early than 1 minute late.
You're right.
So I always thought if I had a sales meeting and I called at 8:30, people might forget what time it was, or just the business day starts at 8:30. So I thought, if I call at 8:29, they might remember that it's 8:29, and it worked out well because I'd always say, if you're 5 minutes early, you're 5 minutes late. I just think being punctual and almost everything you do is important. I appreciate it. I know my clients appreciate it. I think my employees appreciated it. So we had these meetings, and they would last 29 minutes and 59 seconds. I would try to keep it to that.
Right.
Sometimes it would roll a little over, but I learned a long time ago that sales people don't really want to sit into sales meetings, but it's a good, opportunity to have them. So I tried to keep them on time, fast, tried to cover a lot of topics as fast as I could, and keep people motivated, have some fun with them. Always tried to have motivational sayings in the meetings, and it was just something that sort of morphed from my personality. So worked out well, and I was excited that they were successful.
Right. One of the things that you wanted to do is make everybody, financially secure that worked at your organization. And you had this myth of making $100,000 that you would often go over with everybody because, so many people are so fixated on, I got to make $100,000. I got to make $100,000. But then you kind of come up with your own formula, being a numbers guy, saying that, there's a big myth and there's a lot of extra stuff that you really don't know about. So tell the listeners about that.
So I heard once, I don't know if it's still true, Chris, I heard once that less than 1% of the American people make over $100,000. And I know that that's a sort of a big number, right? Going from 90,000 a year to 100,000 a year, it's an extra digit. It's special, right? It's a special digit. But I also realized that once I got there, that there's this thing called inflation, and inflation devalues the dollar, whether it be at the gasoline pump, or the supermarket, or at the Apple store.
Mm-hmm.
So I realized that once I got to $100,000, that with taxes in California and federal taxes, that with 2 children, it didn't buy a whole heck of a lot. So I called it the $100,000 myth. That if you make $100,000 in California, sometimes you got to make more. How's that?
Right. No, I love it. It was definitely insightful. And, growing up, I was 24 when I started working for you. And, I started out a $1,500 draw. For those that don't know, a draw is basically a loan that you have to pay back, once you get to your commission. And so you've always been the type of person that would never micromanaged anybody. You didn't care what time they got there, except for the 8:29 meetings, obviously on Monday. But you didn't care that I had to leave to go coach some days. You knew that I was going to pick it up on the back end, however I needed to do it. And I'm making commission only. So it was easy for me to say, hey, if I don't work, I'm not going to get paid. Tell me about not micromanaging your employees and how that benefited both not only the agency, but you for them as well.
So I've never wanted to manage anybody but myself. I have too much respect for my employees, too much respect for people to tell them what to do. I'd rather work side by side with them, elbow to elbow, than tell them what to do. I just think motivation in your life needs to come from within. It can't be from me, and I think people have to, work as much as they want, work as little as they want. And if it doesn't come from within, I don't think there's anything I can do to make them, be me. It's not what I wanted to do and have Filice aspire to be. So what I tried to do was give people a formula, teach them how to fish. Don't fish for them. And hopefully once they learn how to fish, they would catch all the fish in the world, and they would catch an excitement of catching their own fish. And that sort of worked out really, really well for me and what I tried to do.
Right. Two-part question here. Is that why you like to recruit athletes to work for your agency? Because you knew they had a work ethic, they were striving for something and to achieve more, and they're always going to be searching for more, more, more. I mean, everybody that, whether it be Danny, Ray, all the people that I came in with, we were all athletes and played in high school and college, and it really gave us a work ethic when we got there. And second question, do you think not micromanaging your employees if they're on a salary, could you still do it that way, when the motivation isn't going to be monetarily based?
Yeah, great question. So when you get your license to take the insurance exam, you learn that close to 90% of the people that get their insurance license fail.
Hmm.
So again, there's a knowledge stat. Well, why do they fail? They fail because sales and in the insurance business is a very difficult task. So I just found that as I was hiring salespeople, the athletes seemed to like the challenge. They seemed to like the competitiveness. So I hired one athlete, and then I asked them if they knew somebody. They hired a buddy, and then from there, I just had a really successful formula with athletes that like to compete. And I just think it's a great formula. People that like to challenge themselves, compete with one another, and it worked out very well for me.
And the second part of that question, um, can you do it in a non-sales business where it's like, hey, I'm not going to tell you what time to come into work. I'm not going to tell you what to
Sure
wear
you
to work.
can.
Yeah.
That comes back to if you hire good people that have a lot of pride, that are very motivated people, and you provide a great culture and a great atmosphere, anything's possible. So absolutely, you don't just have to be on commission only to be proud and to be successful. You just have to have a winning attitude and a winning spirit. And as you know, Chris, we had a great compliance team, and they were always looking to have challenges like that pedometer contest, the step contest, our seminars that were prideful. So I think, again, if you hire great people, they'll make your company great.
Right. So you've always been a sports fan. You love sports. I mean, you're always giving sports analogies. I think in our pre-call, you referred to yourself similar to Tom Brady in the aspect of your career now and what you want to do next. And I just remember you'd be, walking through the halls telling McSwain, is that LeBron going to get it done? And things like that. Tell me about your affinity for sports and just a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I think as kids, as I said, I played Little League and Pop Warner football. I think as kids, we see ourselves or we hope to be sports figures someday. We hope to be the next LeBron James. We hope to be the next Tom Brady. But as you know, becoming a professional athlete, less than 1% of the people become that.
Right.
But it doesn't mean that you can't become your own Tom Brady or LeBron James in your own industry. So I just felt like, I wasn't, tall enough or fast enough or strong enough to be a professional basketball player or football player, but it didn't mean that, I couldn't bring that, heart and dedication into the insurance business. So I've always said, you don't go to the grocery store to buy heart. So if you have a lot of heart, you can accomplish anything in any business. But with the professional sports, sometimes you got to have size and speed and strength. And I'm Italian, Chris. I'm only 5'7", and I don't have some of the abilities that Michael Jordan has. How's that?
Right. So I don't know if you remember this, but we went and played basketball several times.
Remember every one of them
on our lunch breaks, and sometimes it'd be hours, sometimes it'd be 2 hours. It didn't matter because I was with you. So,
right.
do you remember that one time? So I was one of the younger players at the club.
Great player, by the way, a great player.
All the guys were in their 40s, and I'm in my late 20s at the time, and I was doing pretty well. I was getting a few buckets, and this buff dude was guarding me and like getting real physical. And,
yeah, he was.
and it looked like it was going to escalate, but you stepped in and you were like, this isn't going to happen. Do you remember that story? And
I do, Chris. First off, you were probably one of the better players out there, if not the best player out there. But I think sometimes guys would go there to feed their egos, and it was great to go there with you. You weren't there to feed your ego. You were just there to have fun, and we did have fun. And that guy was trying to show off a little bit, but the best of my knowledge, you sort of got the best of him, and I think it was certainly a fun time. But I remember that day very well.
Well, you've invested so much in the relationships with your employees, and I think that's why, to this day, I haven't found anybody to say ill will word towards you, because you've handled yourself with so much class and dignity, and you've always done people the right way, whether they stay there for 20 years or that, and for people that may not know, like you were looking for coaching jobs for me. I was passionate about that.
Yeah.
There was a coaching opportunity out in Reno, and you said, hey, I know the people over there, I know the board,
Yeah.
I can get you out there. And now I'm at Valley Christian, but I always appreciated you just finding whatever the right fit was for people at your organization or even outside of your organization. You've sent many of my friends to companies that you work with or you insure, said, hey, I have a great guy for you. And that just goes to show the type of person that you are. So just want to say I really appreciate that.
Thank you. I always felt like when you get into sales, one of the great things about it, Chris, is it allows you free time. When you're on commission only, there's, you create your own schedule. So what's great about it is it carves time for you to go and be a coach or go do things on the side, go play softball. And I always encourage that with all my employees is that, if you got to go do something, go do it. And I just think I read something one time, the most important aspect to most employees' jobs is flexibility. They appreciate being able to go to the dentist or to pick up their daughter from school or to go, run errands that they have to run. So, why take that away if it's so important? And I just tried to make sure that was ingrained in the culture of Filice.
No, that's something that I've definitely taken on in the business that I do. I want them to be flexible. I want them to have that flexibility, like you said, because that is the most important thing, to your point, and I had never, that was my first real job, so I figured every other place is going to be like that, but it's definitely not. And so if you do have that luxury, you should be counting your lucky stars. Tell me a little bit about, you just sold your company a few years ago, but you're
Yes.
still involved in all that, but tell me about that.
Yeah. So one of the sad things in most industries, Chris, is consolidation. You'll see that with bookstores. You'll see that with internet companies. You'll see that with auto dealerships. Well, in the insurance business, 500 independent agencies sell a year. Believe it or not, 500. It's an
Wow.
incredible number.
And you bought a couple agencies yourself before that, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
So consolidation is a part of all industries nationwide. And the reason that it was smart for Filice to sell is we needed a backing of a bigger company. So we sold to, now they're a $2 billion company. They're called Acquisure. And it's allowed us to partner with people in other areas of insurance. Like we never did workers' compensation. We never did general liability. We never did individual life insurance. So all those things now we can do inside our mothership. So it was a good opportunity for us to sell to a big national organization. So now we can sell in every single state throughout the country versus when you were with us, we could only really sell in, California.
Right. So tell me a little bit about some of the sacrifices you've made over your 30-year career. Athletes, they have to sacrifice because they're gone all the time or trying to be the best at their craft. Tom Brady or Jordan or LeBron or any of these major guys have sacrificed a lot to get to where they're at. So tell me about some of the sacrifices that you made.
Sure. Well, I think I heard one of my great salesperson say one time to me that, if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. And we started talking, and we realized that um, when you find out your passion in your career, you sort of bring it home with you. And if your home life is happy, your work life's happy. If your work
Yeah.
life's not happy, it's more common that your home life's not happy. So even though there's a balance in there, it really, your career sometimes becomes you. It's sort of like the blood that runs in your body. And if you can see it that way and merge the two lives that way, you'll be successful, you'll be happy, you'll be passionate, and it'll feel like your daily routine, and it won't feel like a job. I think that's the main thing, is that I didn't want my employees to feel like they had a job. I wanted them to feel like they had a career, an extension of their personality and passions. Hopefully that makes sense.
Definitely it does. So tell me a little bit about what's next for you.
Yeah, I work for the seventh largest insurance company now, Aquashare. The gentleman that bought me, Greg Williams, is an incredible CEO, incredible guy. He has a great vision. And so now I try to help them grow by mergers and acquisitions, by growing our centers of influence here at Filice Insurance. I have a great co-CEO in Michelle now, who is growing every day and leading Filice in different areas that I'm not as talented to. So I will work for Aquashare as long as they want me.
Right. Tell me how you groomed a lot of your employees. You just named Michelle, and she's your co-CEO. She was the director of human resources when I was there, and she's kind of, paved the way. She's lights out, by the way. And if anybody's met her, they know she's super intellectual and just really knows a lot. And she vibes well with people and things like that. But you really walked a lot of the people, like you said, you're working with them and not them working for you. Tell me how you mold individuals because you were a manager, but you didn't like to micromanage.
So I think one of the things that's very special about Filice and business is if you provide people with opportunity, they will take advantage of it. So Michelle Montoya started as an account manager, and we don't put ceilings on our employees. And she grew from there to do seminars and become HR compliance, and became one of the best sales people we've ever had at Filice. So I believe opportunity matched with enthusiasm and passion, there's no limits to what someone can accomplish. So I believe in that word opportunity. If you give your employees opportunity, some people will take that opportunity baton and they will run faster than you've ever thought that they can run, and even faster than they thought they can run, if that makes sense.
No, it does. We'll close out just with a few more questions. One,
Sure.
what makes a great salesperson? Not a good one, but a great.
Okay. A great salesperson is one that gets up every day and wants to set records and wants to be great. I've always said, to be great, you have to want to be great. And it's funny, some people don't want to be great, but I think what makes a great salesperson is the desire to be great, the desire to be competitive, the desire to learn, the desire to know everything about your industry. And I think that's so desire and opportunity and the will to be great.
Right. So this is for my coaches as well as business owners and things of that nature. If the person is a good person, but lacks the level of intensity needed to be up here, they have great potential. Can you as the leader or coach get them to that next stage, or they're probably not going to be able to do it? To your earlier points, if they're not motivated themselves, how are you going to motivate them or anybody else?
Well, you said something. You said something great. Good people. So if you invest in good people, for the most part, those good people will want to be great. So it's really individualistic. If you get someone that's a good person that has a great work ethic, that wants to be great, that loves what they do, that has a passion, that wants to get in early and stay late and set records, there's no stopping them. They will be great. there's nothing I can do to make them great, although I can run with them at any speed that they want to run. And again, I've been successful because I invested in great people. So I wouldn't say it's anything that I did. I would say it was things that I helped them see that maybe they didn't see.
Great. I love it. Two more things. One, you set the temperature there. So if you wanted it cold, it was cold. If you wanted it hot, it was hot. And my meaning behind saying that is when you wanted to go, everybody else seemed like they went just like you. Or when you were like, oh, okay, it's time to, we had a good year, slow down, whether it be during the holidays or whatever, or people go on vacations in the summer, and you don't go on many vacations, but it seemed like the office temperature would go and follow the leader. So do you see that the case in mostly all industries?
I do. I've always heard and read that if you get a salesperson as a CEO, that company will do a lot better because 100% of revenue comes from sales. That's just the reality of it.
Yeah.
So great companies, more times than not, have great salespeople at the helm. So if you have great salespeople, they will deliver a product and a passion that is unmatched in the industry, in any industry.
I love that. Actually, one more to that point. You were always very self-aware. So you knew the type of client that you can go out and sell and the ones that you'd probably burn down to the ground. So you might send somebody else to go out on the sales call instead of you. Tell me about how you've been able to delegate, because at first you did everything. You were the account manager, you were the broker, you were the person, always in front. You were the janitor. And then you started delegating these things out. Give some sort of perspective on how one would do that, or how they would know if they're not good at something.
I think in any business, my father told me this once, you have to be an expert at every single job inside the company. So people will respect you if you learn to cold call. People will respect you if you learn to account manage. People will respect you if you learn all facets of the job. So when we first started, Chris, I tried to learn every facet of the job, every facet of the business, every facet of the industry. Then as time, went on and we grew, I would hire people that were better than me, like a Cassidy or a Michelle or a Mike Chavez. And then at that point, when you hire people that are better than you, then your company will explode because now you've got, 10 people that are really, really good at what they do. So, I was blessed to do each position and learn each position. But then as time grew, I didn't have to be the best at every position, if that makes sense.
Definitely. Well, last question. You had a terrific quote in our pre-call that you got from Jeff Bezos, and I believe that's the reason why you work so hard. Can you share with us that quote?
Sure.
And, just a little bit of background on why that means so much to you?
Sure. So somebody told me this quote, and as you know, I love quotes. One of my favorite quotes is from Henry Ford, Chris. And Henry Ford said, if you think you can, or you think you can't, you're right. So I've always loved quotes. And one of my clients came up to me and said, Ronnie, I have a quote for you since you love quotes so much. He said that he was watching Jeff Bezos speak, and they were asking Jeff Bezos, who's the CEO of Amazon, one of the wealthiest people in the world. And they asked Jeff, now that Amazon is so big, why he keeps working so hard, that he doesn't need to do that. He can, lift his foot off the gas pedal. And Jeff Bezos told the camera, or told the interview, he said, I don't think I can lose it all. I know I can lose it all. And I think sometimes if you take that attitude in life, that you can always lose, you'll have that fear of losing. You might not ever lose. And I like that, and I live with that, and I get up every day and I try to, do better.
Definitely. Well, you are definitely going to win forever. I really appreciate our conversation and our insight. It's going to help people, with their mentality. Hopefully you're super successful. And I just really appreciate your time and most importantly, what you've done for so many other people. And just thank you, Ron, for your time and sharing.
Chris, thank you. And what a great impact you're making on the community and kids. I look up to you. I love you as a brother, and just proud that I could share this hour with you.
Thank you.
All right, Chris, thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Beyond the Buckets podcast. Please remember to subscribe, rate, and share the show with your friends. And until next time, take care.